Okay, looks like everyone's in. So welcome everyone to this week's edition of Paleo Perks. We're really excited to have Verónica Díez Díaz from the Museum for Naturkunde in Germany. And Verónica will be talking about digitizing dinosaurs, ethics and technology in the 21st century. So a bit about the format of today's seminar. If you haven't been to a Paleo Perks seminar before, or you're joining after a little while of not joining us. So we'll have a few welcome announcements for the next 5 minutes, followed by Veronica's talk, a moderated Q&A for a short time, and then tea time, which Veronica's very kindly agreed to stick around for. So we encourage you to stay and have some more chat time about the talk or things that you want to know about Verónica and her career. Don't forget to send your questions via the chat to the questions at Paleo Perks host, who today is Gwen. So a bit of housekeeping. So Paleo Perks values the participation of everyone interested in the paleo sciences. Please remember to abide by a code of conduct during today's seminar. If you somehow found yourself here without having signed this, please take a moment to go to our website and have a look. Please also remember to mute yourself for the duration of the talk. You should already be muted, but if you find that you can unmute yourself, please remember not to unmute you so that we maintain a nice quiet environment for our speakers. You can ask questions by chatting to the questions at Paleo Perks host or by using the raise hand function. So if you want to raise your hand, we'll allow you to unmute yourself so you can ask your question by voice. Any technical issues should also go to the questions host. We have closed captions built into our Zoom, and you can use the CC button at the bottom of your screen to show or hide them. Remember to nominate all of your outstanding early career friends and colleagues for a Paleo Perks talk as well. The link will be in the chat very shortly, as well as fill in our weekly feedback form for demographic information so we know a bit more about who's attending our seminars. So this is anonymous, optional, but very much encouraged, and you'll find it in the chat window also very shortly. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Verónica Díez Díaz. So Verónica did her bachelor's in biology at the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid in Spain, followed by a PhD at 2 universities also in Spain, and is currently at the Museum for Naturkunde in Germany. And with that, I will hand over to Verónica for her talk.
Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know, please, if you see it like in presentation mode.
Yep, that looks great.
Cool. So first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this Paleo Perks talk. This topic is maybe a little bit strange because it's not usually talked about in meetings or in outreach events, activities, but since a few years it has become more and more important. It's something that it needs to be discussed more, not only for dinosaur collections, but in general for all natural history collections. And before starting, even though I'm the one speaking, I must say that I'm only a little part of this huge team that we are in the Museum for Naturkunde in Berlin, working in this project about the decolonization and best practices, digitizing collections. There are several people involved from several departments, not only paleontology, but also data management and humanities of nature. So we also have historians working with us. So this makes like a multidisciplinary team working all together in this great topic. And first of all, I guess that when we go to the museums and we see these main halls, these cabinets with all these skeletons of dinosaurs or extinct animals or invertebrates, we generally think with our heads, researcher heads, like all the projects that we can do with this material. But in several cases, these specimens also have like a important or controversial background. And this is what we are going to discuss in this talk. More specifically, in this case, the fossils that come from the Tendaguru site in Tanzania. And this was like a part of Africa that was a colony in the last years of the 19th century and the early years of the 20th one. And the area that is now Tanzania was divided by the British and German countries in this moment in two. So, but we are going to focus in this Deutsch Ost Africa, so in this part, and I'm going to present you a little bit the project that we are developing. But before, also describe a little bit what is a colonial collection or a collection with this colonial background. As you may imagine, most of these collections are, even though they belong to countries from the southern hemisphere, most of these collections are in places, institutions from the global north, like yeah, Germany, the United Kingdom, the USA, France, etc., etc. No? And they not only comprise, in our case, we are speaking about paleontological collections, they not only comprise fossils, but also other natural history elements, like, for example, hunting specimens, because these naturalists, these researchers also hunted gazelles and other mammals, so they brought the specimens like trophies. Also, they brought botanical specimens and even sometimes historical and archival documents. So we need to start thinking about these fossil specimens, not only as isolated elements, but also comprising a lot of information around them, as we are going to see. These collections have both benefits, but also negative things. As you may imagine, the benefits of these collections mainly are deposited in the institutions that have these collections, these historical remains, because in a scientific way, by having these huge collections, we are gathering more researchers, we are creating more projects, we are publishing more papers. So by doing that, we get more research grants, like the institution gets more scientific recognition. We also get more visits from other scientists. And also, they also have like this impact in outreach activities, educational programs, etc., etc. So this means that the institution and the people working there are going to get more reputation and more governmental support. The country, the city is going to get more tourists. But contrary to this situation, most of the negative things, if not all, are laid in the countries of origin of these specimens. You know, like, for example, these places usually don't have enough financial support for going to these northern institutions to see this material that belongs to these countries in the south. And another important thing that we realized when we were not working from people from Africa, some of them, some people from Tanzania, when they come to the museum, they told us that they didn't know these remains existed, not even existed, no? So they were really surprised that their countries could have such an amazing collection or remains. And this is a huge problem because we are going to see right now. This is a lack of transparency between mostly this northern institution and the countries of origin. And this is also important because we are like breaking this bridge between these collections and the cultural and historical heritage of these countries and these communities. So, as I already told you, the things that unite these colonial collections, one is this lack of transparency. We are not making this information accessible to everybody. Also, we need to start thinking in paleontology that fossil remains or specimens of colonial collections are both natural and cultural objects. They are not only for research, so we need to think more globally about that. And also, there is a recent history surrounding these specimens, because this, for example, the Tendaguru collection at the museum here, Naturkunde, already has 100 years of history in the museum here, Naturkunde, and a lot of things happened during this time. So we need to put into account all this information too. So as you may imagine, a lot of problems arise surrounding these colonial collections. We have already said some of them, but a lot of people is involved in decisions that need to be taken. So governments, the institutions themselves, communities, but we scientists are only this little piece of the puzzle, and how can we contribute to make better this situation? So I'm going to explain in a few minutes what we are doing in the Museum for Naturkunde for that, but a little bit of historical contextualization here. As I told you, Deutsch Ostafrika was a colony of the German Empire in the last years of the 19th century, the first ones of the 20th. And in the 1906, some locals from Tendaguru found some large bones, and they decided to speak with an engineer, a German engineer, that is Bernard Sattler, who got in contact with some people in Germany, some researchers, naturalists, scientists. And the first excavations were done, as you see here, in the 7 and between the 9 and 13. Mostly led by the paleontologist Janensk. So I don't know if you know a little bit of Mesozoic faunas and discoveries, but I usually have this slide because I have done this presentation also to in outreach events, and people don't know what is well, they know what is late Jurassic, and but they don't know why Tendaguru is so important for the paleontological community. As you see here, the numbers, because generally the numbers are the quantitative way of assessing the quality of a site, no? Tendaguru is one of the most important late Jurassic sites in all around the world for studying paleontology. More than 230 tons of material was brought to Berlin, and even nowadays we are still finding boxes and corsets with material inside that needs to be prepared. By now, 13 species of dinosaurs are considered valid. More than 100 publications have been made open to everybody. And in the main collection, we have 5 skeletons. By the way, one of them, this sauropod, Jarapatitan brancae, is the tallest mounted skeleton in the world, and even has its own Guinness World Record. And a little bit about the work organization in the excavations. Well, as you may think, as you may imagine, the German scientists were the ones leading everything, organizing the work, also getting in contact with the local and German authorities. They documented on the findings, wrote the journals, etc., etc. And the workers were the ones that were doing all the hard work, no? The Tanzanian people. They lived in separate villages, but they were brought together to closer to the sites. And one of the things that it's only briefly mentioned in the documents is that they also moved all the families with them, but almost no information about the work that the kids and the women did was mentioned. And this is really sad because thanks to the families, they also were able of feeding themselves. The women were the ones repairing the clothes, etc. So in this project, we are also trying to find more information about that and making the work of the women also accessible and transparent for everybody. The workers were paid like a small loan. They also have the basic medical treatments, etc., etc. And 37 quarries were open during this time. And as I told you, these local workers were the ones doing most of the hard work, but not only digging the specimens, the fossils, they also created the crates, the corsets, the boxes to bring all the remains to the boats. And by the way, they have to transport these bones, these huge crates, for almost, I think, if I remember correctly, like 3-5 days walking through all the land to arrive to the coast and just put the bones in the boats so they can be brought to Europe. And one of the things that I really love to mention also is that they were really sustainable. Thing that we don't do right now in the excavations, because as you may know, we create a lot of garbage, especially when we are doing the beds for large bones. But these people use and reuse materials like, for example, the trees they had there for creating these crates, also the bamboos for creating these bamboo corsets. There were also baobab seeds where they put the little bones with the cotton, so they were really, really sustainable, and they had a lot of really nice ideas for creating this transport for the bones. Also, as I told you, in each of these colonial collections, there's also a lot of archival documentation, not only catalogs and drawings from the field, but also letters to other scientists, to governmental people. Jannings, for example, and Sattler, they also have journals where they describe all the daily life there. And one really nice thing is that the German scientists also taught the local workers to identify the bones and just to imagine how these animals were in real life. So there are several drawings where you can see drawings made by the local workers where you can see how the bones were recovered and how they imagine them to be in real life. And even in some of them, you can say, oh, this is a sauropod for sure. So they were really good at drawing. But also, as you may imagine, in these journals, like the heroes and the people doing the best work were the German scientists. Like in these journals, they always put all the merits that these people were doing. But the work that the local workers were doing were like somehow diminished or even not mentioned at all. So, for example, the names and the family that lived with them was even omitted. And this is really sad because this also is linked together with the thing I was saying at the beginning, that the Tanzanian people don't know the things that they have in Berlin because of this lack of transparency. It's really sad that they don't know that their great grandparents work in this field and they have these amazing dinosaurs. So we are trying to look for the information, every little information that we find in all these documents to make them accessible for them so they can be proud of all the findings that their families were done in the past. So now I am going to start talking properly about the project that we are working on. We started already 1 year ago, and the most important word that link every part of this project is the word contextualization. We are trying to connect both the paleontological data and the historical one. And one really important thing is that we are not going to pre-select anything. For us, it's as important like a fragment of a rib with a large femur, for example, or a photograph or a drawing from a local worker. Everything is going to have the same importance, and we are going to be as comprehensive as possible. As I already told you, we are going to make all these neglected aspects like names, family duties, etc., visible to everybody, and we are going to include perspectives from both communities, or from Tanzania and in Germany, and also having in mind that we are speaking about specimens like cultural and natural history objects. And in this data platform that we are going to develop, we are going to put at first all the information both in 3 languages, in German, English, and Swahili. and this is also important. We are going to make all this to avoid this digital colonialism, because if we make like some, as I told you before, the no pre-selection of data, if we make some kind of prioritization, then in these digital approaches and platforms, then even if we don't want to, using artificial intelligence, etc., or even in the search bars, this is going to increase this is colonialism. I don't know if you understand me, but if you want, in the questions part or even in the tea time, we can discuss this a little bit better. So I don't spend too much time on this because it's a huge topic. So more of the things that we are doing, as I told you, we are not only focusing on the specimens, we are also trying to keep evidence of these field practices. And for that, we are also scanning the bamboo corsets. And in this case, for example, there is a team that was built with truffles. So when the German people ate these, the things that were inside this tin, they filled it with cotton and little bones. So as I told you, they were really sustainable at that moment. So they reduced it several times also. And in this photo that we have back in the left, this is a bone that is broken, but in the moment was it prepared with some kind of clay and tissue that these people also use for making their clothes and their houses. So as you can see, they were really imaginative, trying to think about the ways of preserving and transporting the material. So this is also historical information, and we don't want to lose it. So we are making, taking notes of everything, digitizing everything that we can. Also, we are making CT scans of the bamboo corsets, for example, and sediments, just to see before we break them, to see what is inside. We can use the CT scanning to see what is inside and decide if it's necessary, open them, and losing this information. So as you can see, we are trying to have everything as best preserved as possible. I already told you, these specimens, we are not going to think about them like an isolated bone or isolated fossil. They are going to be linked in this data platform to a lot of things, like, for example, all the museological objects that are connected with them. For example, if we see in a photo below, for example, from the archival material, that in this photo, it was found, as you can see, the specimen number, I don't know, the number XXX. Then we can link it to the specimen and the photo. We can also link it if there was like a bamboo corset. We can link it to the bamboo corset too. Also, if some casts were made for that specimens, we are going to link it there to paper publication and, of course, to the 3D models that we are going to do. So even though this is a data pre-selection, I'm going to explain why. This is the first part of the project. We are testing all the protocols. We are opening, developing the data platform, etc. This first part of the project is going to be 3 years. And if we get lucky, we are going to get an extension of other 3 years to finish everything. So in this first part, we are going to digitize the fossils that are referred to the ornithopod Disalotosaurus and to the sauropod Jarapatitan. So even though this is a pre-selection, this is only for the first part of the project, all the remains that are referred to these specimens are going to be digitized. It doesn't matter if it's a fragment of a bone or if it's a huge femur, as I told you before, and also the archival documents are going to be digitized. And this that I have below is really important. All of them are going to be digitized following the FAIR and CARE principles. Maybe you already know what are the FAIR principles. Is all the digital assets that are created needs to follow these principles. They need to be findable, accessible, reusable, and interoperable. All of them, if we want to make a proper work. But maybe you don't know about the CARE principles. And this means that all this digital information that we are going to create needs to be put also in together, we need to discuss to have a networking with the country of origin. They need to be tell about everything that we are doing, and they need to have a decision and an opinion on all the single steps that we are taking. By the way, I forgot to say that in this huge team that I'm working on, I'm the leader of the 3D working group. So I'm the one that is like deciding what to do and how to do all the digitization of the collection. And for that, as we have a huge collection, every time that a team in an institution or a museum wants to digitize a collection they have in the institution, they need to sit down, all the team, and decide several points. We don't. It's not useful if we go to the collection and just starting digitizing in randomly. No. So if we want to do things properly, we need to see. I mean, I'm not going to explain all this table, but we need to have a plan for preservation. Also, we need to have a plan for creating, selecting, and documenting all the digital information that we are going to create, because we are going to have a lot of terabytes, and we need to be sure that we want to keep everything, how we want to keep it, and of course, how this material is going to be curated and accessed. So for that, we need to spend several days, weeks, just trying to think about these preservation intervention points. After we have thought about that, as I told you, we are going to digitize this Allotosaurus and Jarapatitan in this first part of the project. And of course, there are a lot of digitization techniques. Maybe you know some of them. I'm going to present you some of them in this presentation, at least the ones that we have in the museum for Naturkunde. But of course, it's not the same if you want to digitize a single caudal vertebra of this Allotosaurus, or well, they are like that, they are really small. Or if you want to digitize one of these huge cervical vertebrae that are in the basement from Jarapatitan, they are in a cage, and it's almost impossible to move because they are really heavy and also they are really fragile. So we need to think about different ways of digitizing these specimens. And for that, we are lucky in the museum that we have this cool arm 3D. It is like a semi-autonomous robotic arm that has a camera attached in its end. And as the name says, it's almost autonomous. I mean, you only need to put the fossil in the turning table and then put several settings in the computer, but then the machine, the robot, is going to start taking photos of all the specimen, and even the computer is going to decide. As you can see in this left image, that some parts are in red. Okay, in this moment, the computer is thinking, I think some information is missing from this part. I'm going to take more photos. And then in this second round, it's going to take more photos of this part. So it's really nice. And meanwhile, even though it takes some time to take all the photos and process the 3D model, by the way, is done by surface structure from motion photogrammetry. Sorry. While it's taking the photos, you can do other things like, for example, writing your paper, or if you want to scan the other specimens following another device, another protocol device, whatever. And also one negative thing is that, as you may imagine, it has limited portability. You cannot move it, so you need to be the one bringing the fossils to the turning table. If you have a simple fossil, but like, for example, a small caudal vertebra or a normal femur without any specific features, you can use a surface structure from, structure light scanning, like, for example, the Artec scanners. And they are really, really fast. You almost have the feedback of the things that you are digitizing in the computer. So for really simple specimens, it's really nice. And if you feel confident taking photos and running the softwares, structure from motion photogrammetry is one of the best options, in my case, is the one I love most because I like being in control of all the parts of the methodology. And it's really easy to, I mean, you only need to put the specimen in the turning table or even put it in a flat surface or whatever. And you need to start taking photos, trying to cover all the surface of the specimen. And then you only need to bring the photos to the computer and run a software to create this 3D model. As I told you, this is really nice, for example, for complex bones with a complex anatomy or some fossils that are difficult to access, like the one I told you before, or yeah, the ones with a complex morphology like skulls or vertebrae with a lot of fossae and laminae. After we have our 3D model, don't worry, you don't need to read everything in this slide. But it's really important that besides this 3D model, we need to put all the information that is around it regarding the device that we have been using for creating the scans or the 3Ds. Also the name, the person who has digitized this information, all the protocols, the workflows that we have been doing, because as you may imagine, it's not the same if we use the cool-term, for example, or an ARTEC scanner. The resolution is going to be different. So for research purposes, for example, maybe we really need a high resolution mesh 3D model. And maybe with the EVA scanner, we are not going to get that. So it's really, really important to have all this information together. It's the same as with the archival material, no? Everything that surrounds the 3D needs to be put together with this file. So as it's in this slide, it's important to have names for everything. What is data, metadata, and paradata? Well, yes, no. In German, they say Jein. But the important thing here is that we need to keep everything. It doesn't matter how we call it, but we need to keep all this information and trying to find together as an standardization. The good thing is that in arts and archaeology, they are already been working on that for a lot of years. So at least we have some part of the way paid. But yeah, we need to look for this information before making our own decisions. In paleontology, at least, we have a few papers like the ones of Davis and Falkingham and colleagues, where they put this table. Again, you don't need to read it, but they put all the information, the essential data, and recommended that needs to be published together with the 3D model for making it fair, as a fair object, as I told you at the beginning of the presentation. So they can be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. If we want to make science like open to everybody. And yeah, some of the most common files using for 3D models are STL, PLY, and OBJ. And the good thing about PLY is that all this metadata information that we need can be embedded together with the 3D model. No, in the other cases, you need to create, like for example, an CSV file or an Excel or a README file, something like that. But it's something easy to do. PLY and OBJ can also have this texture information, but in the case of the STL, we are going to have only the 3D model, like for example, in a gray color or whatever the 3D viewer has by default in the settings. This is also important if you are going to export your file, your 3D model, you need to think carefully about the encoding, no? Because, for example, if you want to use it immediately, like, for example, for 3D printing, or if you want to share it with a colleague or put it in a 3D viewer online, maybe this binary encoding would be the best solution because the files are smaller. But in our case, as we want to have them also for archiving purposes, we need to use this ASCII encoding because this coding is human and machine readable. So for the future, it's better to preserve the 3D models or even all the files that they have this kind of encoding. It's better to preserve in ASCII. Also, if you cannot embed this metadata information in the 3D model, you can use these README files, and this is one of the examples where you put, for example, the specimen, the taxon, the catalog number, what is the institution, also all the photos or scans, all the files that have been created, the technique, methodology, device, protocol, etc., etc., etc. Also, it's important if you use during this process algorithms, scripts, inputs in the software, you should include it here too. And later we are going to see why in the copyright licenses. Besides this metadata file, we can also include, if the software has this option, like a project report, like in this case is the one that creates Metasite. So this is really nice. We are doing that too. And as you may imagine, we are creating a lot of files. In this first part of the project, we sit several times with the team, the 3D team, deciding what we are going to create, what we are going to keep relating with the 3D models. And in the end, all these raw photographs, because maybe in the future we can create better 3D models, and at least we have this raw material. The projects, metadata information, etc., are going to be stored for perpetuity in the SIB Institute, where we have the museum has a collaboration with, and also other copies are going to be, smaller copies are going to be made for a 3D viewer that is called Compact. That is going to be used as a viewer for the data platform that we are going to develop later. And also for research purposes, we are going to use Morphosource. Some colleagues already asked me why we are not using I forgot Sketchfab. And it's because Sketchfab is mostly used for commercial purposes or artists. So we think that the 3D models that we are created are better suited for these repositories, that they have like a more research focus. And now with the licenses, because this is another really, really difficult topic, as I told you, we need to put all the algorithms, the scripts, everything that we have used or created for creating this 3D model, we need to include it in the metadata file. But why? Because when you put a license to a thing, it's because you have created artistically, let's to say, you have created this object, no? So here we have the problem that we are trying to make everything as accurate as possible, because what we want is having a 3D model that is an accurate representation of the physical specimen. But yeah, the more original the model is, the more useful for us, for researchers, and also for this data platform. But then it's not original. It's something that has like a physical, well, no, it's a digital copy of the physical element. So some people say that maybe these 3D models don't need a license. This is something that is being discussed right now, how to approach these things. But yeah, in this case, we are speaking of 3D models that belongs to a colonial collection. No, they need to have some kind of license. This is difficult because also because this interaction between the law and the 3D technologies is still in its infancy. There is only a little bit of information about that, a little bit of research, and even these laws change depending on the country. So what we can do, well, first of all, speak with the institution and see if they already have some guidelines about the copyright licenses, etc. But for the moment, yeah, if we want to keep science as open as possible, we should choose some of the three licenses that are in the bottom, no? But we are still debating in the team what to do with that, because it's a colonial collection, and there has been a lot of discussions about the commercial way that this collection has been used for. So for the moment, we have decided to keep this CC BY NC. So no money is made with the 3D models, but the 3D models are going to be made accessible to everybody and mention the people who have made the 3D model. And we decided to use this because it's easier to go from a really restrictive license to a less one than the other way around. So we are being cautious here for the moment, but probably we will change it in the future. We will see. And why I say that? Because these specimens that belongs to a colonial collection and also together with these care principles, we need to be in contact all the time with the people from the country of origin, and we need to discuss with them if they agree of having this license or the other. So because maybe they don't agree of having again like a license, like an object where other people make money with them. So yeah, for the moment we're still debating that in the team, but we are keeping in our heads all these steps that we need to take, and always having in mind that we need to be discussing this with the Tanzanian colleagues. And as a last slide, yeah, I think this summarizes everything that I've said. The most important thing about these collections, we are starting these projects in several institutions. The times change, and also the ethical and moral values. But the most important thing that we need to do is trying to make everything transparent, accessible, and make this contextualization of all the parts that belongs to these collections. Also, we need to collaborate with the scholars from the countries of origin, engage in dialogues, and this is also really important because in one of these networking activities that we had in the last months with people from Africa, they told us that yeah, the institutions and governments are important parties here, but if we want things to go faster, we need to get in touch with the communities personally, with the NGOs, with parties, with the activists. So this is one of the things that we are starting to do. And yeah, because we want to find this beneficial interest between all the parties involved. Yeah, as the last sentence, just to say that please remember that fossils are not only fossils, they also have like a historical and cultural background around them, especially for this collection with this controversial past. So I really hope that after this talk, when you go to an institution, especially from the north, the global north, you start seeing these specimens like with other glasses, no? That's it. Before I stop speaking, I would like to acknowledge all my team and collaborators, but especially all these local workers that with the hard work they made possible that people like me who work on dinosaurs in this case from Tanzania, the Tendaguru site, they made possible that I am carrying and my colleagues are carrying such an amazing projects about, for example, biomechanics. That's it. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for such a great talk. I definitely learned a lot through all the research you've been doing. This is a quick reminder to the audience. You can send your questions via the chat to the questions at Paleoperks host, and then we will read out your questions. So we've had a few questions in so far, and firstly, do you include Tanzanian scientists in your work?
Yes. I remember I asked, well, I applied for an ERC starting grant a few years ago, and I was not lucky enough because I asked specifically for a PhD student there because we wanted to teach them how to develop the proper steps in paleontology, etc. So this person could go back to Tanzania and start a team there. As I told you, I was not lucky. I didn't get the funding. But in this project, we already have one Tanzanian woman. She's the one working on the translation of the German to Swahili for the data platform. We are trying to get in contact with more people there because we want to prepare to teach them how to prepare the bones, and also I will be leading the digitization part so they can also know how to digitize the specimens, because I really hope in the near future it's planned like a small museum there in Tendaguru, close to Tendaguru in Lindi. And the idea is that they start developing their own teams in paleontology. So our part, the German part in this project would be just pushing them, teaching them how to start on this project together at first, and later with collaborations. But yeah, these are still small steps, but yeah, we already have several people there, because the problem is that there is not a paleontology department in Lindi, and so first of all we need to start like this working group there.
Oh, thank you so much. So we've had another one in. So do you have an engagement plan to engage with Tanzanian scientists or communities more broadly?
Yes, indeed. What we are doing, for example, in this moment in the museum, there's a Tanzanian colleague. We have a lot of people coming to the museum right now from Tanzania. We are inviting them with other fellows to mainly to discuss our plans with them, and just to them to give us feedback on how to improve the project, the steps, and how we can get in contact with people there. For example, there is also an artist and activist, I think she was from Tanzania too, that she's going to help us promoting the project there in Tanzania. I cannot say much more because it's the part of the humanities of nature, the one that is leading this part of the networking. But yeah, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you that in this right moment, there is also a Tanzanian colleague that came expressly for this networking to the museum, and I couldn't go with the rest of the team, but they are presenting right now all the museum to this person, the collection, and I guess they are also having some feedback from him.
Nice, thank you. So there's one that's just appeared in the chat. So question asks, for the reconstruction of the 3D model, eventually how will it look like? Are you aiming at the possible motion of the whole dinosaur?
Yeah, I mean, this is another project that I'm working on. Indeed, I started with this project. When I arrived in Berlin in 2015, my postdoctoral project was working in biomechanics of dinosaurs, more specifically the tail. And then is when I learned how to digitize objects, no? And I realized at that moment that there were not so many best practices or guidelines on how to work with 3D models. And then is when I started thinking that maybe we should work more on these ethics parts and best practices. But yeah, in the same time, while I'm digitizing the 3Ds of the specimens in the museum, then I also use the 3D models for my research, no? That is biomechanics. So Yeah, I mean, the whole dinosaur, I'm not sure because I don't have so much time. But in the moment, I'm focusing on the hind limb and the tails of the sauropods.
Great, thank you. So another one. So this question asks, I enjoy the concept of preserving paradata along with the metadata. You mentioned it is important to ensure the reproducibility of the work and make it more accessible. But would you also say that preserving the information also legitimizes the data for various communities involved with the data production and use? How do you view the role of your group in this process?
Cool. I really like that you like what we are doing with the paradata, metadata. Yeah, I think this information is also important because, for example, it's a way of ensuring that everybody is going to be able of using the 3Ds that we are creating. Because, as I told you, for example, I mean, we are trying to use the most common formats so everybody can access them and open them in their computers. But with the metadata information and also metadata, if somebody wants to play a little bit more with the photos of the scans, with this information, they are going to be able of opening it in other softwares and maybe, for example, creating 3D models that are more suitable for other kind of studies. So this is the plan, and in relation with I don't know if for various communities involved with the data prediction and use. I mean, the role of our project, of our group in this process, I think at least in paleontology is, if not the only one, but it's one of the first leading this process. But we are just following the lead of the archaeological people. They already have a lot of the protocols and reports on how all the metadata that needs to be filled, all the paradata that needs to be written for everything is put together. So yeah, in paleontology, we are just following the lead of other people, but at least we are one of the first. I don't know if I answered your question.
I'm guessing if the person who asked the question wants to send a follow-up, if things got missed, perhaps they will do this. But thank you for explaining. So we will have one more. And this question asks, what other steps do we need to take as a field to decolonize paleontology?
Yeah, interesting question too. Oh, it's really difficult because there are several areas of decolonization in paleontology. And each one of them is different. We need to take different approaches. So as a field to decolonize, let me think about it because yes, I told you it depends. We are little pieces in the puzzle. So as researchers, I may say, we should engage more with these outreach activities. Just for example, in this case, or not only outreach, but also for the paleontological community, just to share what is happening, and so the people know that this situation is here. Because I've already spoken with fellows that said, okay, no, a fossil is just a research subject. I mean, I don't want to complicate things more, and I'm not going to think about the ethical concerns of this specimen. So and yeah, we need to stop thinking like that, because there's also, as you said, Liz, this historical background, and maybe the people from the countries of origin can help, can feel a little bit bad if they don't see themselves reflected in the work that they are doing, the others are doing with their specimens that belongs to their countries. So For example, trying to get in contact with people. In our case, as I told you, I mean, we cannot work with a paleontologist from Tanzania because there are no paleontologists who work on these dinosaurs. So we will be using these people as tokens, and this is not ethical also. So the point here, following these different strategies, in this case, would be just trying to start growing these connections, this academical networking, and start teaching people so they can start their own teams there and departments in the future. If the countries of origin already have like a department, okay, maybe we can already contact the people that could have some sort of expertise there, and so they can help us developing these academical networking strategies. So yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, and it depends on the collections that we are working on. Again, I don't know if I answered your question. Maybe it was too general.
So it's a big one.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so we have come to the end of question time. If anyone didn't get their questions answered, remember to stay around for tea time to talk with Veronica. So I'm gonna close out. Thank you very much to Veronica again for such a fantastic talk. And thank you very much to everyone in the audience for joining us. Please remember to fill out the weekly feedback form. The link will be in the chat very shortly so that we can learn a bit more about who attended today's seminar, and join us next week on November 26th, where we'll be joined by Petter Havag from the University of Stockholm in Sweden. The talk will focus on droughts, flooding and wildfires, disentangling seasonal and annual precipitation signals in the tropics over the Holocene using delta D, alkanes and GDGTs. So if you're not sticking around for tea time, we'll see you next week. If you are staying for tea time, this is an informal conversation about the talk in a relaxed setting. And we like to do a fun little icebreaker. And this week we have, what is your favorite dinosaur and why? But first, it's time for a quick break. So remember to get up, walk around, have a quick drink of water, come back in 2 minutes. And if you have pets, please bring them to tea time. We always like to meet them. And we will see you in 2 minutes.